Hey everybody, welcome to the commas PowerPoint. Today we're going to be going over commas. This is what I was going to cover in class on Thursday, but as you know, I'm going to this conference. I want to apologize for that, for not warning you. But we just found out for sure that we got approval to go this past Friday, so weren't positive it was going to happen, so we didn't put it on our schedule. So anyway, this is what we would have gone over in class Thursday, commas. And I'm going to also put up a video for Friday, which just goes over general grammar rules. The reason I'm doing this is because your rough drafts for your narrative descriptive PowerPoint, those are actually due Friday, February 14th. So once I get back from my conference, we'll have about 2 class days to really kind of go over that, make sure we're all on the same page about exactly what I'm expecting from that. But the grammar stuff is what trips a lot of people up. And we've gone over a lot of this in lab, but we also haven't gone over a lot of it in lab, especially because we haven't had that many labs. So some of these are common rules you're going to be familiar with. Some of them you may have not heard before, but hopefully it will help you kind of gauge, because commas are truly the number one thing people have issues with. So first thing, everybody knows that we have to use commas in our writing. The thing is that people aren't always 100% sure about where they go. And this goes way back. I've always had trouble with commas, and I know most of my students have really just not enjoyed commas. But the truth is, you can't really write a paper without them. Sometimes people put them where a natural pause goes, which is kind of a good indicator, but it doesn't always work 100% of the time. So this PowerPoint is just going to go over some general rules that are going to help you kind of get some more clarity about exactly when to use a comma. This definitely isn't every comma rule, but it's the most common comma issues that I've seen. So I promise it will help you, especially if you're just kind of clueless about commas, which a lot of people unfortunately are. So the first thing is one that we're familiar with because we've gone over it in lab. This is where we join the comma and the fanboys when we have two independent clauses. Remember in lab when we were talking about compound sentences, and we said that an independent clause is anything, any portion of the sentence that could stand on its own if it had to, because it contains both a subject and a verb. So, first example, the car ran out of gas, but the gas station was just ahead. Now, the car ran out of gas could be a sentence by itself, okay, because we have a subject and a verb. We have our subject car, and then we have this verb phrase here. We know it ran out of gas. So we've got a subject, and then we've got some kind of action being performed. So we've got a subject and a verb. Gas station was just ahead. So we've got the gas station was, which is a linking verb. So both of these could stand on their own. The car ran out of gas, the gas station was just ahead. So we are dealing with two independent clauses. And whenever we have that, remember this is just like our compound sentence lesson, whenever we have that, we join it with a comma and one of our coordinating conjunctions, which some of you told me you remembered that little acronym fanboys. And for some reason I put them out of order here. But anyway, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so are fanboys, okay? So anytime you have two independent clauses, you join them together with a comma and one of our fanboys, okay? Only if you have two independent clauses. So some of you, I told you when you were having trouble with this, I said cover it up. Cover up what comes before the comma, cover up what goes after the comma. Could it stand on its own? Really think about it. Could that be a sentence by itself? Or does it sound like it's missing something? Is it missing a subject? Is it missing a verb? All right. If you find you have two independent clauses, then this rule applies, comma and a coordinating conjunction. Okay. Second one kind of goes along with this, because this is where people get confused with, do I put a comma and a conjunction, or can I just do a comma? What's going to work here? And some of you, this example was in a couple of the questions for your lab last week. And that deals with introductory phrases, clauses, or words. Okay, so introductory phrases, clauses, or words introduce the independent clause. You put a comma between the introductory phrase and the independent clause. So this is where you have one independent part of the sentence and you have one dependent part of the sentence. Okay, so independent is independent. It can stand on its own. It doesn't need any help. Dependent cannot stand on its own. Okay, so that's a portion of the sentence that can't stand on its own because it's either missing a subject or it's missing a verb, or, both. Who knows? All right, so these are like examples like this. When Christmas is over, we will take down the tree. Now, we will take down the tree could be a sentence by itself because we've got our subject we, and we've got our verb will take. Okay, so we've got a subject, and our subject is performing an action, so this is good. We will take down the tree. But we've also got this introductory phrase, and that's all it is. It can't stand on its own. All it's doing is introducing us to the main part of the sentence. When Christmas is over. Okay? Now, when we read that, we know when Christmas is over is not a full, complete sentence. We're waiting for the rest. When Christmas is over, what? Okay? So we know it's just introductory. When Christmas is over, we will take down the tree. And whenever that happens, whenever you have some dependent portion of the sentence introducing the rest of the sentence, you know you put a comma between them, okay? That's just one of those rules. And this is one where you can almost hear that natural pause that we talked about. When Christmas is over, we will take down the tree. Because it's your birthday, you can have this present. Since it's January, you should not wear shorts, okay? Now, just a little side note here. If the independent portion is first and then the dependent portion comes next, it's not introductory anymore, okay? You only have to do this when it's introducing the main part of the sentence. If that main part of the sentence, if that independent part of the sentence comes first, then no comma is necessary. So, when Christmas is over, comma, we will take down the tree. But if I have, we will take down the tree when Christmas is over, same information, but that independent part came first, so no commas needed. So that's just one of those things. Dependent first, comma, independent first, no comma. And it kind of goes without saying, this is just to introduce, and we wouldn't have a big independent part of a sentence introducing anything. Okay. Now, this one we already know very well, comma splices. Okay, this is what we went over, I think, this second week. Comma splices we know they're incorrect. It's when we have two independent clauses and we only link them with a comma, okay? And they're incorrect because we need more than that. We either need to add one of our fanboys here, or we could replace this comma with a semicolon, or we could just put a period, okay? But if you have just a comma between two independent clauses, that's a comma splice, and it's incorrect. We need something else. So do your test again. Cover up the first half, cover up the second half, okay? And ask yourself, could this part stand on its own? Could this part stand on its own? If they can, they're two independent clauses, and we know we need more than just a comma, okay? So do that little test. Take the time to do it. It will save you a lot of trouble. Okay, now, this one, essential versus non-essential elements of the sentence. This is one that people kind of have trouble grasping because it's a little tricky. Basically, the simplest way to think about it is, do I have a big section in the middle of my sentence, or a small section? Is there a section in the middle of my sentence that just seems to be extra details but doesn't really help the meaning of my sentence overall? It doesn't help me understand the sentence any better. It doesn't give me information pertinent to the sentence itself, okay? It's just kind of added details that don't really seem important. So, first example. The girl who happens to be my sister hates the color yellow, okay? Now, I'm going to offset this with commas because that's a signal that this is non-essential, okay? When something is non-essential, it means that I can take it out and the meaning of the sentence remains the same, and not only that, but what I took out didn't really give me any extra details. It doesn't matter that it's gone now, okay? So, now I have the girl hates the color yellow. It doesn't matter that this girl is my sister because that doesn't really explain why she hates the color yellow. It doesn't matter one bit, okay? Now, if this said the girl who, had a traumatic incident with yellow paint hates the color yellow, that would be essential because it explains more about why she hates the color yellow, so I wouldn't offset it with commas. But this is just extra detail that doesn't seem to matter. Another good example of this is the word however. Michael's paper, however, was very nicely done, okay? Now, the word however is great. It shows contrast, and sometimes we need it in our paper. But I could take it out, and the meaning of the sentence would still remain the same. However doesn't provide me any extra important details, so I can take it out. And I'm not really going to take it out, but I'm going to use commas to signal that it's not essential, okay? Now, here's some examples of things that are essential. The jars that fell out of the shopping cart immediately shattered, okay? Now, some people might be tempted to say the jars that fell out of the shopping cart immediately shattered and offset this whole middle phrase with commas because you might say, well, if I have a sentence that says the jars immediately shattered, that still makes sense, so I could surround the rest with commas. It would still make sense, But this says the jars that fell out of the shopping cart immediately shattered. So it's giving me more information about the sentence. It's providing me with more clarity. Why did the jars shatter? This is telling me, so it's essential. People who cheat are only cheating themselves. Some people might be tempted to say people, comma, who cheat, comma, are only cheating themselves. But you wouldn't want to do that because this is providing extra information that pertains to the rest of the sentence. If I have one that says just people are only cheating themselves, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I'd say which people. So this helps me understand, so it's essential. So just this kind of deals more with content of the sentence, not so much, our subject and verbs here, etc. This deals with content. You really have to think about the content. Is this essential to the sentence or is it not? Now this is one that people are really familiar with. Anytime you have items in a series, 3 or more items in a series, you put commas between each item. Mom bought milk, comma, bread, comma, and eggs from the store. So this is an example with just one word each. Here's another one. I got home from work, made some spaghetti, watched a movie, and went to sleep. So these can also be little phrases as long as they're items in a series. Now, what you'll notice is that a lot of times people want to leave off this final comma. Okay? We see it all the time. We went to the park, the mall, and the grocery store. People oftentimes leave this comma off, and you might have even been told to leave it off at some point. But for my class, I want it there because it does help with some clarity sometimes. It clears things up, and I'll show you an example. Basically, you'll see it dropped a lot of times in your reading. It's often dropped in newspapers and magazines because it saves space, it saves ink, and it also doesn't alter the meaning of the sentence most of the time. Okay, I could still, if that comma wasn't there, I could still figure out, what they're saying. They went to the park, the mall, and the grocery store. It totally makes sense. But sometimes it causes issues, and here's an example. This award would not have been possible without my parents, Oprah Winfrey, and my English teacher. Now, you could read it the way that this person intended you to read it, which is this award would not have been possible without my parents, without Oprah Winfrey, and without my English tutor. Or you could read it the way it actually is, correctly read because of that missing Oxford comma. This award would not have been possible without my parents, Oprah Winfrey, and my English tutor. So somebody might mistakenly read this as this person's parents are Oprah Winfrey and the English tutor, which is just, all kinds of different and not what they meant. So we want this comma here because it provides extra clarity. Okay, we know that our reader could probably figure out what we meant, but we don't want to make things difficult for our reader. Audience is essential. We always want to help out our audience and not confuse them. So put that comma there. All right, now this one, basically, basic rule on this is when you have adjectives, coordinate adjectives, non-coordinate adjectives, you need a comma between coordinate adjectives. You don't between non-coordinate adjectives. Okay, so the rule is if you can flip your two adjectives, if you can switch them and the sentence still makes sense, then you put a comma between them. If you can't, then don't put a comma between them. So, for example, she was a tall, clumsy child. She was a clumsy, tall child. Still makes sense. He has a kind, warm smile. He has a warm, kind smile. Still makes sense. So I put a comma between. That is a three-toed sloth. Or, that is a toad-three sloth. No, absolutely not. Doesn't make sense. Okay? So, ask yourself, can I switch them? If you can, comma between them. Alright? This one doesn't really come up a whole lot, but should you come across it, free modifiers are things ending in ing, also known as gerunds, but you can put them anywhere in the sentence, but they basically just have to have a comma wherever they happen to be. So Nancy gave me the rat box looking excited, or looking excited, Nancy gave me the rat box, or Nancy looking excited gave me the rat box. Doesn't matter where they go in the sentence, they just have to be offset with a comma. And last but not least, commas and quotations. This is one that's really easy, but a lot of people just aren't familiar with it. John said, please pass the mustard. Okay, so when I have a random quote in the middle of my sentence, I have to put a comma when I'm introducing it. I also have to do it when I have a quote and then I stop my quote and then I pick it back up. Never do that again, said John, or I will be very mad. So never do that again. I leave it off with a comma, and then when I continue my quote, I pick it back up with a comma. All right? Now, the only exception to this is if you have some punctuation within your quotation. And this doesn't happen a whole lot, but it can. So, you've got to be kidding me, said Janice. Are you the guy from the commercial? Asked Phil. I already have punctuation here, so I wouldn't put an exclamation point and a comma. So, that's just kind of a little exception for that. Okay, so that's all the comma rules. I'm also going to put up the PowerPoint. I know I had to go through this quickly. Please review it and obviously email me if you have any questions.